Have the first part of the top job of the University of Surrey Students' Union, the presidential candidates. Now, the president has a wide range of roles. They have to be adaptable to every situation. They need to assist their colleagues with their roles, and they need to be a strong leader ensuring that the union progresses, supports and fights for its students, and be pretty much as awesome as it can be. But before they come up to the stage, I'm going to try and enhance a little bit of enthusiasm. I've got some more jokes. Oh, yeah, cool. Right, where do bees go to the bathroom? Where do bees go to the bathroom? The BP station. Why are pirates called pirates? Because they are. Yeah. This one made me laugh. Why did the toilet paper roll down the hill? Because it wanted to get to the bottom. Cool. And on that note, I welcome to the stage Alan Sutherland. That's right, no worries. And we're now welcome to the stage the presidential candidates for the hustings of 2014, and roll the VTs.
The candidates for President, Maz Hussain.
Hi, I'm Maz. I'm running for President. The student union needs experience, it needs continuity, and it needs a vision. Vote for the best candidate. Vote Maz.
Peter Smead.
Hi there, my name's Peter Smead and I'm running to be your next union president. I think you should vote for me because I'll be a strong voice to the university, be an effective leader for the team of sabbaticals and provide real representation for all students at Surrey.
Charlie Wen.
Hello guys, I'm Charlie Wen. I'm running for the union president. I stand for finances. You want some actual cash in your wallet? Please vote for me.
Hooray! Ah, there we are. Congratulations. Let there be light. Well, isn't this exciting? What you will notice is, unlike the rest of the positions, I have no cards. I do have some here in my pocket, but they have nothing written on them. We are completely freestyling tonight. The presidents, unlike the rest of the candidates, have no pre-prepared questions. It's no underestimation that what Mike said is absolutely true. The president really is head and shoulders over everybody else. They are the ones at the top of the tree. The only thing above the president is the 15,000 student members. So what we want tonight is as much questions from you, the audience, from you online. There is no third. So you, the audience, and those online, and we want to hear from the candidates as much as possible what they want to do and what they want to achieve. Now, being president of the, by the way, StagTV, this is your cue to start getting ready. Being president of the Students' Union is one thing, but to be president of a university is entirely different. That is also the term for the Vice-Chancellor. To be president of Universities UK, which is the umbrella body for all universities in the UK, is another thing entirely. He is also a Knight of the Realm and a Fellow of the Royal Society. He is our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Sir Christopher Snowdon. And he is providing our first question for the candidates tonight, and it will appear on that screen.
Well, the university has always enjoyed a very strong and positive relationship with the Students' Union, and I personally think it's extremely important in terms of engaging with students. One of the things I'd like to ask you is how will you manage to ensure that we continue to do this, and in particular represent the views of all students, including postgraduates, so the university can do the very best to create the very best student experience?
Thank you very much, Sir Christopher. I'm going to give the candidates a couple of minutes to ponder on that. The question there is, the university has always enjoyed very strong relations with the Students' Union. The president is there to represent all students. How are you, as president, going to continue to do this? Especially, how are you going to represent postgraduate students? For this, I am going to go from my right to my left. We shall go Maz, Charlie and Peter. So, Maz, what do you say to Sir Christopher?
Hello, Sir Christopher. As Vice President this year, we've done an incredible job of engaging as many underrepresented groups as we possibly can. And the postgrad community that are always underrepresented that we found as a SAB team was something that we wanted to engage with. So we made them a catered booklet thing that highlighted what they what they would be interested in and what's best for them. In a similar way to GSA students, when we acknowledge that they are underrepresented, we reached out a lot to them and saw that each person will have different needs, each student will have different needs. They might not have Wednesday afternoons free, for example, might want to get involved in sports. That's something we can really fight for, because as Em worked with the Vice Chancellor on making sure that was a reality. So for them, it's massively important. There's 6,000 of them, so I think they make up about 40% of the actual student population. So it's an incredible amount of people, and we need to reach them.
Thanks very much. Incidentally, I'm allowing comments and rebuttals from the audience and from Twitter on these responses. That's what you need to deal with when you're president. But we hear from everybody before then. Charlie, how will the union continue to represent all students, particularly postgraduates?
Firstly, I would say to build a strong relationship with them, we need to know what the real concerns are. Mm-hmm. So what I believe would be finances. So for any concept like equality, representation, finances would be the real fundamental concept. Especially for postgraduate, they pay higher tuition fee. So if we provide finances with them, so to decrease the level of fees, then obviously we can help them. And also for every year, we have a talk by the student union to the students. Mm-hmm. However, in my experience, there were not many people. So we can, instead of that talk, we can ask the lecturers to tell the student what we are doing in the first few lectures, and ensure that they know about the student union, they know about the University of Surrey and everything else.
Thank you. Peter, what would you say to Sir Christopher?
Hi there, everyone. So talking about engagement with students, I think it's important that as the president, you understand a lot of the issues that everyday students face, which is why I think real representation is a real issue, which I've kind of touched on in my manifesto. If you're trying to represent all the students, you have to have had some experience of their issues yourself. Obviously, this doesn't mean that you would have every single experience every student has had. But I think it's important that you put yourself out there in terms of being in societies and being in sports clubs, and making sure that you live a lot of the issues that everyday students face. Regarding the postgrads, I know Chris has done a lot of work this year with the Postgraduate Society. They've kind of come back from the brink. They've just come out, and he's brought them out, and they're doing social events, and they're really a motivated society now. And I think that continuing engagement with the society, especially, which they are now a part of, and they do feel more a part of the union, I think is vitally important into ensuring that we represent all students, especially postgrads.
Thank you very much. Now, we've got some comments coming in on Twitter, but I'd like to hear what the audience have to say. Have you got any particular questions about those answers? I want to stay on this question set by the VC. It is of fundamental importance. When you meet with him, he needs to be assured that you are representing the voice of the entire student community. So I'd like to hear specific points on that question.
Are there any postgrads in the room?
Hang on, we've got, I can see a hand in the back there, Leonie, behind you.
Hi, Alan, it's Osama.
Oh, hello.
Hi, it's good to be back. One of the main questions, sorry, I'm not asking a direct question, but we've seen across the UK universities with huge amount of money being spent in students' union, and my personal view is that it's not just the finances that we are here to represent, because it's not to do with the finances, it's the... Anyway, sorry, coming to my question is that how will
We've missed you, Osama.
I know,
I know.
I have to think about what I say. That's always what you told me. Sorry, how are you going to really hone into going to the extra mile to speak to the postgraduate students? We know they have different timetables. How are you going to incorporate them more into the union as a whole?
Thank you. Very good point. we know from experience that postgraduate students, and we saw, if any of you are watching online, we had 2 very different postgraduate students. They have very many different needs, aspirations. Some of them are researchers, some of them consider themselves as staff. They may have caring responsibilities, they may have children, they may be mature students, they may have just a simple thing like trying to park their car. These are lots of things that postgraduate students have to deal with. Jowly.
Do you mind I answer the finances would be the main concept of the representation question first?
I have to say, Twitter is wondering if your entire campaign is based around money.
No, actually it's not. Let me ask you guys a question. If the service options are limited by the university funding, the so-called subvention, so how could we really represent you? If you want this service, for example, if you want more minibuses, but we don't have the finance, how could we represent your voice? How could we help you with that? We can't. So we really need a revolution to the student union to build more trading subsidiaries, to receive more profit to support back the student union. So my plan is to shift half of the university funding, the subvention, to build these.
So you're saying the only way to effectively represent students is with more money. The richer we are, the better we can do this. Is that it?
Not really. It's the solution for the solution for the needs and expectation.
Okay, you may have more to say that. Peter, this particular point about the diverse nature of postgraduate students and their different wants and needs.
So obviously postgrads being on a completely different time schedule to undergrads does set them apart a bit, because a common thing that is a criticism brought to the union is that we are too undergraduate based. One of the reasons why one of the things I would do in order to engage with postgraduate is obviously use the postgraduate officer within the union exec. I fought hard this year to keep that position on the exec. They were trying to change the roles of all the executive officers, so nobody had a specific, so there was no guaranteed postgraduate representation. And me and the current postgraduate officer were vocal critics of this plan, and we managed to stop it from happening, because I knew it was so vital that they had a voice on the union executive if they're going to be included within the union. Also, the Postgraduate Society, which was brought back by the Postgraduate Development Officer at the moment, that is obviously a point which I would use as a point of contact to understand their concerns, obviously using the postgraduate officer as a part of that. And it's all about understanding their issues, understanding, how much do they feel a part of the union. But like I said, having that representation within the union is vitally important in order for us to understand what their issues actually are.
When you say they, who are they, Peter?
Postgraduate students.
No. They wanted to remove the postgraduate officer.
Oh, the union executive this year.
So the entire exec?
A portion of the union executive.
Maz, did you want to abolish the postgraduate officer this year?
I think abolishing is quite a strong word, and I was going to touch on that point anyway. The union exec as a whole, so all 13 that have come and sat up here to try and get elected, they need to understand that they are representatives of 15,000 students. They, regardless of the role that they're under, so the events candidates that just sat here, that's also postgrad. So it's not just event international students. It's not just international officer. So abolishing it was never the thing. But I will give you some context. As a team, we started to realise that maybe some student bodies were underrepresented. So postgrad is one of those, GSA students, international students, whatever. And we sought to conquer that and try and find a solution to it. And kind of stuff that I've learnt this year and has been hammered into me being vice president societies is that I am a vice president first. So I have 15,000 students behind me, and that's where my head goes. I'm not the society's officer that just happens to be a sabbatical as well. But anyway, to get back on the postgrad topic, I think on University Council at the moment, a grad school is massively on the agenda, and a lot of what I've done is very visionary stuff, which volunteers. So a grad school's on the agenda, and that could potentially lead to a PG union, a PG president, which is incredible stuff. And if the Vice-Chancellor is still saying that postgrads are underrepresented, it shows that that is a potential thing that could happen. And if it keeps happening year on year, then it's something to really, really look into. But that would massively change governance, and it's a different kind of worms.
Okay, I want to explore that area because it's something you both raised. We've seen over the course of these evenings, many students put themselves forward for part-time officers. And in some competitions, it's fair to say that all of them have performed exceptionally well, and in some competitions, it's fair to say some of them have not. So is it fair that because they're segregated into these different positions, that we will always have, we will always lose all the good candidates, and we will end up with maybe those who have not performed quite so strongly? And the argument is that if you remove these pigeonholes and these divisions, then you can take all the best part-time officers that you've seen. Or would you say that it's better to give a focus to these roles, and so that you have a postgraduate, you do have events and trading, and that you have specific students focusing on specific remits? You know, as the president, the working of the union is important. Union chair is responsible for exec, but you are responsible for the overall reputation. So what do you think on that? Peter, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the portfolio versus non-portfolio.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I fought very fiercely for the defined roles of the part-time executive. This doesn't mean that I'm happy with the way it is now. It's just the idea at the time was brought up very rashly. It was very unthought of. There were so many questions that hadn't been answered. And me, along with a few others, felt that this needed to be thought through. Not one single student was consulted when this was happening. It was brought to us, and then a couple of weeks later, we held a vote. I do support next year having a governance review of the part-time executive roles. I think the student population has changed since we last did it, and I think it's important that the part-time roles reflect that. But I do fully support them having defined roles, because I think if we didn't have, say, an international students officer or a postgraduate development officer, which are famously unrepresented, we need to have their position on the part-time exec to keep them there and give them a voice.
Well, you've had time to consider this problem since it was discussed. What would you propose as a solution going into a governance review?
Well, obviously, we need to do some consultation with the students themselves. Like I said, that was lacking in this, which is why I was so against it in the first place. But I would suggest that maybe there are a few things that could be switched around, in the sense of maybe events and trading could be a bit tweaked in a way, because there has always been that disconnect with the commercial side, which is what events and trading has been what should be focused on. Obviously, that's speaking from a personal perspective. There's other things like environment and ethics. I don't see them going together very well. I think it used to be equality and ethics, and they changed it to environment and ethics, and I think they're very two different things. But obviously, that's something that you need to have consultation with. You need to talk to the students, see what they feel they need, you know, what they need to be represented, and then that can go forward and obviously form part of the governance review.
Maz, how do you feel about non-portfolio versus portfolio?
It's that thing of all the exec are there to represent all students, and okay, so if I ask the audience, is there a disabled part-time officer role? No. Is there a mature students officer role? Is there a GSA students officer role? That list goes on, and you'll never ever tap into each group of students, and they all need different, like a nurse student. We don't have a nurse exec officer, and they require completely different things. But as an exec, every single elected student representative is there to represent every single 15,000 students. And it's difficult as a part-time officer, as a full-time student. That's something that a president needs to be aware of. They're studying. They don't have that much time to get sucked into their remit. So the international officer debate on Friday, Sunday, sorry. No one could name who Calvin was. Is that because One World Week hasn't happened yet? Like, that's not cool, because he should be representing all students. He should be out there anyway. But because I haven't done One World Week yet, he hasn't had a chance to speak up. And that for me is why I think non-portfolio roles have a future. But it's students that do decide ultimately.
Thank you. Jowly, I realise you're at a slight disadvantage here, not being a member currently of the executive committee. Are you happy with the concept that there are roles defined, as you've seen this week, postgraduate officer, events and trading, or should it just be, I'm a student, I'm interested in this, vote me onto the executive committee?
To be honest, I take this as an advantage because I can think out of the box, think out of the rules. And also for representation, I mean, I agree with Peter, to have more focus on each concept, like each aspect. And I encourage have more course reps and more like the student life mentor, that's so called now. And however, to do that, we need finance. I have spoken to the to the life mentoring team. They say they don't have the finance to recruit more, to recruit more life mentor.
Listen, fair respect here. A lot of people have been commenting that people haven't been sticking to the manifestos. Here's a guy who's been talking about finance in his manifesto, and he's talking about it here tonight. So I think that's going to be recognised. Okay. Any comments from the floor on what we've heard so far? StagTV, get ready. We're going to move on to our next question. I see no hands. I tell you now, candidates, take advantage of this. Charlie's up after me, and you know what he's like. He's like a rabid dog tonight. So a nice one. I'm already seeing people saying ramp it up. Oh, sorry, there's some hands over there. Wave your hands at it. Oh, I can't see anything that happens in Rugby Corner. Shout.
My question is, for all of you guys, obviously, what do you think will be your biggest challenge as president?
What do you think will be your biggest challenge as president? Okay, that's a good question. I think we'll go with that. What will your biggest challenge as president be, Maz?
I think it's exactly that conversation we just had, like finding, because the part-time exec thing was not approved. I think it's finding how you can best get the work out of that incredible team, because the people that sat up here and received absolute crap from Charlie, let's face it, have done it for a reason, because they want to represent students. But the SAB team is different from the part-time team. I, as a SAB, and the other 4 SABs are paid to work, and we've either graduated or, okay, we've all graduated this year. So we're not studying at the same time, but the full-time students are doing a degree. And it's keeping them in the loop. So a lot of what I've kind of gone on about is that communication, but it's also the communication with the exec body, and making sure they're fully aware of what's going on, because ultimately they're the ones on the ground. I spend a lot of time in the union. I'm not in lectures. I'm not walking around campus as much as I'd love to, because I've got a lot to do. But they're the ones ultimately that are receiving stuff all the time, and they need to. I think it's kind of realising that they're listening and taking everything on board as a representative of these 15,000 students constantly, and bringing it to exec. So the biggest challenge is kind of honing that.
So you think your biggest challenge next year as president will be reforming the exec committee?
Not reforming, getting the most out of...
Getting the most out of them.
So they are the ones on the ground, so...
Charlie, what will be your biggest challenge as president?
My biggest challenge as a president would be the communication between teams, because they have different views, conflicts inside the team, and whereas, like you say, I stand for finances, we're considered as a revolution to the student union. So everything will be different. I need to, communicate with them to make sure, like, the finance point will match like the VP society's point, effectively,
Listen, you're a first-year student. You're an economics student. It's a bold move running for president. Have you enjoyed the experience so far?
Yes, I have learned many things, like campaigning and knowing much more, stuff and more people. Yes.
Good, that's what we want to hear. Peter, your biggest challenge as president?
Obviously, being president requires you to speak on behalf of every single student here at Surrey. I'm just one person. I can't pretend, or I wouldn't never pretend, that I have experienced every single thing that every single student here has experienced. So I think it's going to be, the biggest challenge for me is going to be able to understand a lot of those situations, because I haven't been in them myself. Like I said, there's only so many things I've done in my life, and there's a lot of things that other people have done, or other people might have experienced that I haven't. So I think it's kind of the empathy aspect of it. But I think that's something I'm very willing to work off, and I'm going to obviously learn a lot more in this role and learn a lot more about the student population we have here that I haven't already experienced myself. So I think that would be my biggest challenge.
Well, that segues very nicely into our next question, which very shortly shall be appearing on the screen. Because as you say, students come from all walks of life. They have lots of different experiences. And the majority of these go swimmingly well. Sometimes, however, some people end up in difficulty. And the good men and women in blue may come a calling. So we have our next question, not just from Guildford Police, but the Chief Constable of Surrey Police, Lynn Owens. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening. My question is simply this. You have a role of responsibility in society. How are you going to ensure that your students, many of whom will be away from home for the first time, enjoy themselves and have fun, but keep safe and act responsibly too? Thank you.
Once again, you have a few moments to think about that. Just to paraphrase what Lynn said, you have a position of responsibility and a great deal of students are coming away from home for the first time. How do you make sure that they enjoy themselves safely and responsibly? I have to say a big thank you to the Chief Constable. We went to see her right in the middle of the Surrey floods. The headquarters were full of army and she took a time out of her day to do that. So I think that's very good. Thank you. I can't remember which way I went last time with the first question, so I think I went right to left. So Peter, your answer to the Chief Constable.
Just to clarify, it's about how do students enjoy them and have fun but stay safe.
Yeah, and also the point is that it's that many of them are away from home for the first time.
Yeah. So obviously, all of us being students here, we know the challenges that we've faced coming to university for the first time and not really knowing anyone. I came here not knowing a single person. Like, as you can tell, I'm not from the south, so I didn't know anybody from around here. It was completely foreign to me. But I kind of took that as a positive. I took that as something that I could turn into something great because it gave me kind of a new start to do something different. And in terms of obviously going out, having fun, staying safe, the union offers so many facilities, obviously in terms of Chancellors, Rubik's, and the various outlets that we have. And it's important that that we notice our own responsibility towards the students that we invite into our venues. So obviously the great St. John's ambulance, obviously, that are downstairs, that is a brilliant part of the union, they're there on the busy nights and they're always there to help out students. And I think that shows that the nature of students is to help other students. And I think that as having that helping hand, we've all been out on a night out where your friend might have had too much to drink, you're the one who have to look after them. And I think that nature is there with students. And I think students have a lot of, they have to have the ability to do a lot of these things themselves and help their friends and help their students, like even if they know that they don't. I'm
going to clarify on that. I mean, that's great if you're here in Rubik's, and you know, students giving each other a helping hand. But I tell you what, for the residents of Walnut Tree Close, it's not a helping hand they'd like to give some students. I tell you that much. It's a bloody good thump round the head, and that is the problem that things like the police constantly have to deal with from this university. It affects the reputation of the university, it affects the reputation of the students, and it affects the reputation of the union of which you are in charge.
Well, I think it was very telling. A month or so ago, we had a zero amount of crimes reported on campus for 1 week, and I think that just shows that we are getting a better relationship with the community, and the community is giving us obviously a lot more of respect. The problems with Walnut Tree Close, they've been identified. We've worked with the local community in Walnut Tree Close. So things like when you have pub crawls, you have to avoid Walnut Tree Close. It's all about finding the compromise between the two. I mean, I don't think anyone out there, you know, despises students and hates them and wants us to suffer. It's just about us coming to a compromise and being the person that can sit down at the negotiation table and obviously speak up for student needs, but then at the same time recognise that there are things that need to be resolved. And it's just about having that strong voice there that can stick up for students, but does acknowledge that there are issues and can come to a reasonable conclusion.
Thank you. Zhao, how will you make sure that students, many of whom are away from home for the first time, enjoy themselves safely and responsibly?
To be honest, I quite like the welcome pack from the Life Mentors. They gave some necessities. So when you arrive as a first-year student, I don't know for the second year and third year, but I'm sure that we should have more life mentors. And when they arrive, we can provide them with information, you know, knowledge of living independently, and also tutors. I mean, the general tutors should really take responsibilities. For me, for the whole semester, I mean, I only see my tutors twice. And people, they don't respond, they don't report problems to tutors. So we need to encourage the tutors to interact with students rather than students going to their office and talk to them. And also, it's kind of about representation. And also, the safety problem is commonly in night. It's about nightlife. For example, you go to a casino in town because probably the events in Rubik's does not, you know, probably engage you, or probably they have more space and many things. So, well, come back to my revolution. We have a new student union building, and this building will be abandoned. This building will be used as a market for any profitability, and we will have a new student union building. The Rubik's will be will be larger, and also we have more events. We will we will communicate with the events and trading officer. We have more activities for you guys, and we'll make sure if you go to casino in town, we will provide traffics. We'll talk to Ariel and have more night traffics.
Thank you very much. Just to say at the end of this questions, Tony will hopefully be coming up on stage a chance to address you all, and you can ask her some questions as well. And she will be leaving a question for the candidates. Maz, what do you say to the Chief Constable?
Hello. I think starting with the fun aspect and welcoming these students to the university. One of my favourite things that I've done this year is that Freshers Welcome talk, where you give 18 Freshers talks in that first week. And the first couple were a bit difficult, but then I introduced throwing a stress ball into the crowd as they walked in, and that started to, you know, engage with them a bit more and building that union pride a bit. And then the safety stuff is, it's not just town, so it's Hazel Farm, it's Manor Park, building a relationship with all the wardens at Hazel Farm and Manor Park, and in town building a relationship with the venues. I mean, the way commercial stuff generally works is that you have a relationship with the bars in town and stuff, just to ensure that everyone is safe, because that is ultimately what's most important. I've met, is it Miss Christmas, the police constable lady that came in, I had to chat to in my job. Went along to a Get Guildford Growing local community event where I got to meet a lot of Guildford people, and that was incredible. It's kind of just building those relationships with people in town, so that everybody is there for the students, not just on Walnut Tree, but everywhere on town and off campus.
Okay, you talk an awful lot there about building relationships and working with. However, when, you know, push comes to shove, you are the president, you are the one that takes responsibility and has to take responsibility. How can you assure these people that you are able to take responsibility when things do go wrong?
I think if I've done everything that I can do, then I absolutely would take responsibility. It's getting those students at the start really engaged and really knowing how important their life at university is, and that's something that will stay with them forever, and it's a consequence that if they were to do anything stupid, it does stay with them. But it's building that relationship with the community massively, and making sure that they are aware of everything that we're doing.
Thanks very much. Now, have we got any questions on that particular topic from the floor? I'm very interested in this idea of the president taking responsibility for the actions of students, how students interact with the community, how students enjoy themselves safely. You're all sitting there absolutely dumbstruck. You're waiting for an explosion. I know what you're all waiting for. You're waiting for the elephant in the room to trump it up and say hello, but I'm sure that will come afterwards. So, in the meantime, anybody got a question? No. Now, gentlemen, what would you like to ask each other? I'm going to give you a question that, because there's only a few of you candidates, you can ask the other two whatever you like. So think about this for a couple of minutes, because you are... Oh, sorry?
Asking one person specific.
No. Ask both candidates something else, and you can ask them separate questions, something that you want to know. You don't have to pick one candidate, and it doesn't have to be the same question. So you're going to ask the other two candidates something, and I'd like brief answers, because then we're going to go to Tony, and we're going to hear from societies. So, Jowly, what would you like to ask Peter, and what would you like to ask Maz?
I feel that personality is very important to a president. So, Peter, I watched your campaign video. Yes, it was funny. However, I thought that basically, why would you spit to the ground? Are you aware of that? You might be, persecuted by a police officer or a council because of spitting in public.
Okay, I think what Charlie's trying to say is, to paraphrase slightly, it's a role of responsibility. A campaign video may not project the most responsible image. I'm looking for brief answers here.
Okay, obviously I knew this would probably come up tonight, and I think it's important that it does. We've been told so many times over the past few days about how our target is 25% of the students coming to vote. Obviously, that is nowhere near a majority of the students that are actually here. So I took it upon myself. I thought, we've got the students coming to the union. How is the union going to go to the students? It takes something different. It takes something maybe a bit out there, a bit extraordinary. But I think bringing that and bringing them into the union, and then at the end, obviously, I said, come and look at my campaign website, see what I've got to say, ask me anything. It was about getting that initial attention grab and then talking about what I wanted to do for them.
Okay, thanks very much, Shirley. Now, what would you like to ask Maz?
For many years, real representation is a big problem, also emphasized by the NUS. So how could you make sure it will be improved? Because every year it says it has been improved and improved now, and Christopher saying postgrad has not been represented. What would be your actions, the actual actions for it?
Nice and brief.
Nice and brief, if you please.
This year, as VP Societies, it has been incredible. I've learned so much on how to engage with students, and being president and leading a team of 4 SABs and getting them on that vice president mindset would definitely benefit. That is the continuity that I'm keep singing about.
Thank you. Right, Peter, what would you like to ask Jowly and Maz?
Who do you want me to ask first?
Beg your pardon?
Who do you want me to ask first?
Jowly just asked first, so you're actually asking second.
Okay, I'll ask. Maz, looking at your manifesto, there isn't one single bit of policy in there. I was just wondering if you've got any specific ideas that you would like to bring to the union instead of just buzzwords.
And playing for the special prize tonight is Maz Hussain. It's for the speedboat. What are you going to do?
It doesn't have to all be about policies. It's kind of acknowledging how important the future vision is of the Students' Union. So the massive thing that I want to continue this year is everything that I've taken on, everything that M's thrown up in the air. I kind of want to put it back down and make sure that the Students' Union ends up exactly where it needs to be. You've all graduated from a top 8 university. In 50 years, you still would have graduated from this exact same university. It needs to stay incredible.
Peter, what would you say to Jowly?
Looking at your manifesto, obviously, it's very finance-based. It's very, you've got this thing called the dual model about essentially splitting establish a private business to make profits, use half of the funding to establish a private business to make profits. I was just wondering if do you think that's compatible with charity law, given that the Students' Union is a registered charity?
I have to be honest first. I'm not an artist, man. I don't good at design, but I'm very good at sponsorship and those business planning. I carefully check with the charity commissions. If you go to their website or probably go to Google, type it, trading subsidiary of accept charity, I'm sure you will find an answer. Basically, it's allowed it.
Man's done his research. And our last two questions for this part. Maz, what do you want to ask Zhaoli and Peter?
Zhaoli, again on the finances, because that's all we've got.
That's great.
He's ready for you, I warn you.
Because the manifesto is so finance related, what would you do if the university said no to splitting the subvention in half, which is highly likely?
Sorry,
What would happen? You're talking about splitting the subvention in half. What would you do if the university say, we are not going to let you do that with our money?
Firstly, to split it into half is for safety purpose, because doing business meaning risk. So half will be secure, currently the current activities of the student union to provide you benefits. The half will go to build up some private business. If the university says no, basically I can't think why they say no. They don't have any finance. If they say yes to this, in the near future, they will get rid of this funding to the student union. The representation from the student survey says that we want a new student union building. It has been like 5 years now. It was proposed to the university in 2007, but we don't have any. They keep saying we are lack of finances. So if we get rid of that funding for the university, I can't think anything that they would say no.
Zhaoli, I've got to raise you on this. I mean, we get best part of £900,000 a year from the university. So you're saying you want to take £450,000 and, I don't know, spend it on the National Lottery or something, and you want to take £450,000 to use to run the union. But we spend £900,000 a year on running the union. When you take half of that £900,000 and you invest it in something, what do we do with the gap?
Firstly, it's a short-term and long-term problem. So that the 900,000.
So we get about £900,000,
yes.
And you want to take half of it away. So we're missing 450,000.
You are not using that £900,000 in a month, right?
We're
you are
using
using
it in a
year. So the first half year, you are going to invest some private business, and because it is a UK business, we can set up new business in just 30 days. It's the quickest country we can set up some new business. And we, for safety purpose, we just set up some small business like cake shop or anything just to generate profit to cover like the second half year. And we recruit, that's why I say the entrepreneurship scheme. We encourage students to provide some innovative idea. We will fund you. That £450,000 will fund your business ideas, and it's your own business. In return, we take a share part of it, well, probably like 10%. That profits generated by your business will cover the cost of student union. That's so-called representation. Students are the boss of the student union. You like the word the boss? I like it, to be honest.
Okay. My mortgage is with the Cheltenham and Gloucester. If you wouldn't mind having a little word with them before you take office. Maz, what do you have to say to Peter? What's your question?
Peter, you say that teamwork is vital, and use the word vital in bold. How have you worked as part of the union executive team this year to benefit the students that you were elected to represent last year? Sorry, can you repeat? So you quoted that teamwork is vital. How have you worked as part of the team this year, the union executive team, to benefit students which you were elected to represent?
How have you worked as part of the executive team this year?
Okay. So this year on the union executive, it's not been the easiest year. There have been clashes, there have been disagreements, and there have been, just clashes of personality in effect, I think. Given my position that I was in this year as events and trading, I've deemed it, I wanted to redefine the role in a sense. We needed to connect more to the commercial side of the union in order for students to actually have a say, given that we have our commercial side and our membership side. And in order to do that, I had to attach myself more to the commercial side in order to get the student voice really heard. So I had to kind of take myself out of more of the membership, more of the union kind of union exec role body. I still fulfilled my union executive duties. I attended every single, one union executive meeting, and I still fulfilled that role which is required, but I took myself out of that more like generally in order to make that connection with the commercial services, which was so often brought up in previous years, the fact that we never really had a say because we didn't have connection with commercial services. So I took the active step to change that. In terms of how I would obviously have teamwork this year, that's why I've put in a manifesto about the fortnightly SAB meetings, because I think it's important that if we are working as a team, we need to understand what each other is doing and how each of us could benefit each other in terms of the different things that we're going to be doing. And obviously it would give me more of an insight in what I need to be talking to the Vice-Chancellor and to the University Council about.
But Peter, you did allude to the fact that there's possibly a personality clash this year, and you look to the future. It's highly unlikely you'll get on with everybody that you've seen over this week. You could have that problem again next year.
It's very true. But when you're in a different role, such as president, I've acknowledged that you have to I'm taking on very different responsibilities. I'm taking on an incredibly important role. And to do that, obviously, I would have to override the fact that I may not get on with someone, but at the end of the day, I'm working for the whole of the student body, and it's important that I need to bring everybody together. And that's what I've got to override that personality.
So it's acceptable
might exist.
as a part-time officer to be disruptive, but it's not acceptable for the president to not get on with part-time officers. Is that what you're saying?
No.
You said that it's a different role, you have more responsibility, so you would just have to get past it, implying that if you're a part-time officer, you don't need to bother.
Because the part-time officers' roles are so specific, and given that they are full-time students, they're not in continuous contact with the sabbatical teams as much as each of the SABs are. So I think it's important that the part-time roles figure out what they want to do within their role specific, which is obviously what I fought for. And I think they can use the sabbatical team to help them in that. But I think that as long as I'm there to provide that kind of guiding light and that kind of help that they would need, then that's obviously what I would be willing to do. It doesn't matter if I get on with a person or not. I've put that as completely aside if I'm the president of the Students' Union, because that's obviously what the students would expect and what they would want to see.
Thank you very much. So what's going to happen now is the candidates are going to take a break. They get a chance to review what each other said. When Charlie comes back, I fully expect they'll be able to rebut some of these points. You'll be able to explore them more. Don't go away. We're not going to a break. The candidate's going to leave the stage. It really is a genuine treat for us because we have the president of the National Union of Students. She represents 7 million students. If you think 15,000 is hard, try 7 million. She didn't deal with a chief constable. She deals with a prime minister. Please say goodbye to the candidates and hello to Tony Pearce. Take a seat. You can decide which name you'd like to be. So, Tony, an opportunity for you to address University of Surrey Students' Union and tell them what the burning issues for the NUS is and what they should be concerned about on a national scale.
Yeah, and I suppose I need to answer the question that I was asked earlier by your candidate for Chair of Union Council. So I'd like to start by saying that I'm really, really glad to be here tonight. And actually, genuinely, I mean, I do say that everywhere, but I'm genuinely glad because this is the most incredible format for election. For like an election question time that I've seen in a student union. I think it's really, really intelligent and it's been done really, really well and it looks really polished, at least from downstairs. And I know that people are working really hard in Stag Media to make sure that this event is happening and that it's possible. And actually, I'm genuinely really, really impressed. So congratulations! Like it's really good to be here. On the point earlier, I think it's a really interesting point actually that I was asked about how the student union's apolitical. I'd maybe take issue with the idea that it's apolitical. I think you're all probably political to some extent. The amount that you have to pay for your rent or your food or whether you can get a job or not, I think is political. But you're right, the student union is not party political. And I know that, I guess, as much as anybody. So when I first got involved in my student union at college, I got involved because I played sport. I captained the women's football team and I coached it. And then I had health problems. And when I got to college, I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't get into the library because they didn't have doors that opened automatically for disabled people. And it wasn't until then that before then I thought I was really apolitical. I didn't care about politics. I didn't want to get involved. I didn't care who was Prime Minister or what was going on in the country. And then I was kind of in this moment where I couldn't get somewhere because of a decision that someone else had made. And for me, that's what politics is. And I think that NUS and student unions, whether it's Surrey or anywhere else, are political organisations, because when you say you don't have enough money to pay your rent at the end of the month or you can't get a job, that's because of someone else's political decision. That doesn't mean you have to buy into a party or a candidate. And actually, I think that you're perfectly entitled to feel disenfranchised with candidates or parties in the kind of political sphere nationally as much as you like. I'm pretty disenfranchised by them myself. And I don't think that it should put people off from getting involved in student unions or in NUS. And I know that people are put off from getting involved in NUS because they think that everyone in NUS is a certain way. But I got involved in my student union and I got involved in NUS because of sport and activities and because I was involved in a society. And I've learnt loads since I first got involved. But I do think that a lot of the things I believe in are political, and I won't really apologise for that. And, you know, when people stand up and talk about the fact that they want you to have more finance in your student union or more money in your pocket, or that they want you to be able to get a job when you finish university. Actually, I agree with all of those things, and I do think that we need to run political campaigns to change that. So I guess this year the main priorities for NUS are around education, as I'm sure you can imagine. We ran a huge campaign recently to save something called the Student Opportunities Fund, which is £350 million of funding for students from the most disadvantaged backgrounds to go to university. We ran a huge campaign with student unions to save that. And also campaigning, I guess, on issues that people don't talk about very often. I think quite a lot of people get caught up in talking about the same issues: £9,000 tuition fees for higher education students in England, but not talking about things like postgraduate fees or international student fees or visas, or the fact that people can't get accommodation because universities have over-recruited at the beginning of the year. So tackling some of those issues as well. And for the first time really in NUS talking about employment. So one of my kind of big campaigns this year, and one of the reasons I stood for election as president of NUS, is because I think that employment is one of the biggest issues facing our generation, and it's something that people don't talk about enough. The fact that I will struggle to get a job and that we will all struggle to get a job in this kind of economic climate, I think is a real issue. And when it's an issue for students on the ground, NUS should be doing something about it. So we're running campaigns to introduce a living wage and to get more employers to sign up to take on more graduates. So we're putting together a student employer accreditation scheme so you can see which employers have committed to recruiting more graduates and more interns, more paid interns and more apprentices over the next 5 to 10 years. And actually incentivising businesses and employers to take more students and young people on and to support them and to kind of take responsibility for youth and graduate unemployment. And I'm gonna stop talking about NUS because I know you've only got a little bit of time, but I have been asked to ask a question to the president candidates, so I will.
Hold that thought. We're going to leave
won't.
you with that.
I won't.
We'll have some questions for you. A couple of questions
questions
here.
for me. Sorry.
Somebody was asked the presidents what they think their biggest challenge will be. As you're halfway through your first year, what was your biggest challenge as president? And the second question is, it can be seen sometimes that NUS is a difficult organisation to penetrate as a student. What advice would you give to anybody here or watching on how they could one day have your position of NUS president?
I think they're both kind of linked. So one of the biggest challenges that I had is that I the first president of NUS ever to have come from a college and not a university. So when I was first elected, I got involved in my student union in my college, and NUS represents, like you said, 7 million students, and 5 million of those study in further education colleges, and only 2 million of them study in universities. And in 92 years, we've never had a president from a college. And you know, people will raise their eyebrows at the fact that I haven't been to university. But do you know what? I got elected based on the manifesto that I wrote and going out and talking to people and my policies and my politics and my values. And it's really hard because a lot of people attacked me and said that I didn't believe in universities, which would be weird because if I didn't believe in universities, I'd be like sitting in a field right now talking to nobody. And that's really difficult. And I guess when you put yourself out there as a candidate or as a elected officer, it is difficult because people feel like they can kind of attack you and that they can laugh at you. And I think that you should probably you should have a lot of respect for the people who got up on this stage tonight to answer your questions and in the last 2 events you've had, because it is really difficult to put yourself out there and to put your values on the line. So I guess that's been the most difficult thing. Being scrutinised by 5,000 people on Twitter is difficult, especially when it's sort of 1 o'clock in the morning and it's a Sunday and you're like, oh, I just want to go to bed. So that's difficult. It's a hard job. But advice on getting involved, I guess the biggest thing is I think people sometimes put barriers up for themselves and they say, oh, you know, I can't get involved in NUS because it's really political, I can't get involved in NUS because it's this or it's that. And actually I thought that when I was a college student, because NUS had never had a president from a college before, and I didn't think they really understood me, and I didn't think they would understand what I believed in, and the fact that I wasn't really necessarily kind of party political, and that I didn't necessarily go on loads of demonstrations and stuff, and that's not the kind of person that I was. And so I think a lot of it's about perception. Don't shut yourself out of NUS before you've even got through the door, but also there are loads and loads of different ways to get involved, and whether that's through being involved in a specific area of NUS, so our postgraduate campaign or our international students campaign, our LGBT campaign or our women's campaign, get involved in them, because actually those are really incredible places. And when I said earlier, you know, that I had health problems and I was in a wheelchair for quite a while, and actually getting involved in the disabled students campaign and campaigning on issues that really mattered to me as a disabled student actually was one of the reasons that I got involved in NUS nationally. So find something that really matters to you and kind of get involved in one of those campaigns, or like write an email to me or tweet at me. And I know I've just said I don't like being tweeted at 1 o'clock on Sunday morning. Don't do it at 1 o'clock on Sunday morning. But get in touch with us, because I am supposed to represent you, and you can hold me to account. And I know that feels distant sometimes because there are 600 colleges and universities that I have to kind of get to and speak to, and there are 7 million of you, and that's quite a lot of people. But like, you can hold me to account, and if you want us to do things, then tell us, because NUS has only ever done anything because students told us to. So everything in our constitution, all of our campaigns, all of our policies, all of our elected officers were chosen by representatives of you. So, you know, get involved and tell the people who are going to national conference that you want them to vote on specific things or submit a policy to national conference. You can get involved and change things, I think.
Incidentally, if you want to know who is representing you at National Conference, Em is leading the delegation, so go through her. Ian Kugler, who does ethics and environment, Simona, who's standing for union chair, and Sheldon, who you'll recognise as Beefcake from the union shop. Any questions on the floor? This is a unique opportunity. So what would you like to ask the President of the NUS? This is terrible because I can't see any hands because it's so dark.
It's really dark.
Tony, you've satisfied everybody. Either that or they're in order.
Or they're waiting until 1 o'clock on Sunday morning to all tweet me en masse. I won't be happy.
This is your... Oh, here we are.
Is there only one thing that you could change? Like, if there's only one thing that you could do that you think will change the face of student life for the next 5 years, what would that be?
I'll just repeat that for the webcast. If there is just one thing that you could change, that you think would change student life for the next 5 years, what would it be? One thing that you could change.
That's a really, really hard question.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know, it's a really good one. I don't know if this is probably the right answer for you guys, but for me, I think there are loads of arbitrary barriers in the education system. So that sounds like buzzwords, but like you either do like academic courses and you do A-levels and then you go to university and then you go and get a good job in the city, except that's not really how it works anymore. Or you go and do a vocational course because you're not clever enough to do academic work. That's kind of how the system's set up at the moment, and that's not true. I know loads of people who are vastly more intelligent than I am who do vocational courses, who are nurses, and actually who do medicine and engineering and architecture and law and things that are like their practices and vocations. And the idea that you kind of get shut into a pathway at a really young age, actually, when you're kind of 16, that you have to decide what you're going to do with the rest of your life. You have to decide whether you're going to go and do an academic qualification, whether you're going to go to university, whether you're going to do a vocational course or an apprenticeship, and that you can't mix those things together. So actually, why couldn't you be doing an apprenticeship at a university at the same level as a degree and working at the same time and getting paid for that work, not doing an unpaid placement where you don't get enough money to cover the cost of living while you're on your placement? Actually, I think giving people more choice and more options to be able to move between different kinds of education and actually change university halfway through their course if their university is not right for them, which at the moment, if you leave after your first year, you leave with nothing except 9 grand's worth of debt, and that's kind of not good enough. So I think it's about a fundamental shift in the education system, which I guess isn't really one thing. But it's about giving people more options and more opportunities to do a mix of vocational and academic education and learn in different ways in different institutions. So, sorry, that sounded really geeky and wonky, and sorry, but that's what I would do.
I have to apologise profusely. I forgot that we are such a thumping big university. We have another delegate. How could I forget Hannah, the union chair, who is also a union delegate. Hannah, I am so sorry. Time is getting on. We've still got the rest of the presidency in the societies. So, Tony, I'm going to ask you to give your best David Willett's death stare down that camera and fire the killer question to our 3 candidates.
Okay, so having had almost 7 months in my job as president, I'm really excited about what I've achieved this year, and I'm really excited about what I can achieve in the rest of my year. But what I want to know is, if you were elected 12 months from now, what would you look back on and say that you've been really proud to have achieved? What do you really want your legacy to be at Surrey Student Union?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. Thank you very much to Tony. Thank to you, and over to StagTV.
Welcome back to Pundits Corner. I'm Andy and you're listening to or watching Stag Media's coverage of Surrey Decides. Joining me down here in Pundits Corner, we've still got Sam from the Stag, Ollie Deed, former union chair, Osama, who's former president and former VP Societies and Individual Development, that's a mouthful, and Mike Fraser is still here as well. So Osama, I'll cross to you firstly. As a former president, how do you think those 3 candidates did? Did they address the job role?
I thought they were good. I really liked the answers that the candidates gave. I think the 2 were kind of leading the race, and then I was really impressed by the 3rd candidate, who's an underdog in my eyes, but I think he's done his research and he understands kind of to a way what the union is, what we need, but more focusing on the finance side of it, which is a huge topic that I'm sure will come on later.
Just pick up on a point that you made there. You think one of the candidates is possibly an underdog. Ollie, I'll come to you. As we've said, Maz and Peter have been on exec this year. Charlie hasn't. Do you think one has an advantage over the other? Maybe Charlie could bring in new ideas?
Yeah, the problem is I don't know what Charlie stands for. Yes, I do. You know, he's a sort of revolutionary candidate as far as I can see. As he says, you know, he's got a magic wand where he's going to... By the way, can I pitch for the £450,000 over the next 6 months for an air conditioning system in here? You know, Maz is the sort... I've nicked that one off of you, sorry. Maz is the continuity candidate. You know, he's talking about managing the process of change with a new chief executive coming on stream. And Pete, you know, you might say he's the wrecking ball candidate. He's sort of... Some people love him, I love him, some people, you know, don't love him so much. But, you know, I don't think it's an advantage necessarily being on exec. But, you know, Zhao Li is getting his points out there, brilliant. He's got as much chance as any of them.
Cool. Welcome Tony Pearce back from upstairs. How was that upstairs?
Hi.
Hi. Upstairs for you.
Yeah, it's pretty nerve-wracking up there, actually. I'm not envious of any of those candidates.
Fair enough. Ollie, let's pick up the point you made there, called one of the candidates the Wrecking Ball candidate.
Yeah.
So Maz and Peter have made videos. Do you think that's given them an advantage, Mike?
Well, I mean, videos, they're kind of just another form of publicity, aren't they? It's not really, I would have said, anything sort of manifesto related. I think Maz is potentially a little bit more manifesto orientated.
Yeah.
However, there have been criticisms that the same people he asks at the beginning relating to not knowing about the union are the same people who then give the answers at the end of the video. But it's all about publicity, it's getting your name out there. I mean, I think Peter's done a particularly good job on, yeah, okay, it's controversial. I seem to be echoing a little bit over here. It's controversial, but realistically, it's getting his name out there and it's just sort of promotion.
Xiao should do a video of himself sort of bathing in money or something like that, and that would raise.
We have a song, money.
Yeah. Yes, there we go. We can be his campaign managers.
Sorry, for those of us who haven't seen the videos, can someone just summarize?
Yeah, sure. I think Peter Smeed, he effectively sort of does his own take on Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. In which he sort of dons the makeup and then sort of swings around from a tree. And then Maz has a video where he's asking sort of students around campus about sort of different aspects, like how many members I think of the exec board or something like that. And then he goes through to actually answer the questions at the end and sort of vote for Maz. So.
Sam, we'll come to you. What's Twitter saying on this?
Twitter went a bit crazy. If I can go through all the candidates, it seems like Zwali, people do like him. They like him a lot. But when it comes to his policies, he does seem to say finance, economics, and that's what people have really picked up on. And people do love the idea of the cake shop, but people are unsure. sorry, cake shop. But people are unsure of how practical it is. As for Peter and Maz, it seems a bit like Marmite, not love and hate, but love and love. It's very sort of split between those two. I think it seems that Peter is more seen as the more insider to an extent, but outsider, and then Maz is more of the insider, and both have benefits, both have disadvantages. It's quite split on Twitter.
Okay. At the beginning of the debate, they were focused on representing postgrad students. Tony, do you think that's part of the role when there's already a part-time exec to represent postgrads?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was an interesting question from Christopher Snowden. Actually, I think it's a really important part of being a student union officer is recognising the different groups of students that you have to represent and that different students have different needs. I suppose the only kind of comment that I'd make is that while different groups of students have different needs, that doesn't mean that all postgrad officers have the same issues. Yeah. And actually, postgrad students are as diverse as undergraduate students, and that you can't necessarily just lump them all in together and say, we'll have a cheese and wine evening for mature students. Absolutely. And we'll have a non-alcoholic event for international students, because actually I think far too often we kind of easily fall into stereotypes about what different groups of students want and need. So I think it is an important point, and I think they did an okay job of answering the question.
Yeah.
Just Andy, sorry on the postgraduate point. I was a postgraduate last year, obviously at another university, and they had a graduate union, and this was an idea that was floated by Maz, and to be honest, it was a bit of a disaster zone there. So I'd like to think that we'd steer clear of that sort of organisation here and have every single member of the executive team steering towards representing postgraduates in the best possible manner. Graduate union, I just don't like the idea at all.
Okay, just quickly want to pick up on a question they were asked about whether part-time execs should be portfolio or non-portfolio. Ollie, Osama, should they have set positions like they are now, or should they just have a team of part-time execs?
I think having a team would definitely give you the best candidates for the role. However, the trouble is that if you do get a few people that are really more focused on one campaign or one specific position, the other fields feel a bit isolated and alienated. So there's pros and cons for it.
But it's good, we've seen quite a few candidates for nearly all the part-time
Yes, absolutely. But we do need quality candidates, and that's what's important.
Maz did make a good point, a very, very good point, I thought, in that you look at who's there and what is represented and what's left out. And the problem with having portfolio holders is that you can start picking out all sorts of things that should have portfolios. So I think he hits on a very good point, and maybe there's a balance whereby you have some portfolio holders and some who are not, and have a sort of broader remit to go out and talk to the postgraduate students, the international students.
So, Talking actually of targeting all the students, one of the candidates said that we can never tap into every group of students. Do you think that's possible?
Sorry?
One of the candidates said that we can never tap into every group of students, i.e. we can never get our voice. The union can never communicate to all the students.
I agree. You can never tap into every single student. As an international student, some people like their own communities, they just feel alienated because they want to feel alienated. And there's nothing you can do about it. Your job is to make them comfortable, and if they're comfortable with what they're doing and how they're doing it, then your job is to facilitate it.
Do you see the same sort of thing with NUS?
I think it's interesting. I think you have these arguments, I guess, in all student unions and in NUS as well. And I think, while I don't think that you'll necessarily always interact with every single individual student, I think that it's about making sure that you are tackling the underrepresentation of particular types of students in the student union, in different types of activities, in your bars, and making sure that they're accessible to all people, and that actually you're not doing anything that has a kind of negative impact on those groups being able to engage with you. And sometimes that does mean making space for representation of particular types of students. So postgrads is a really good example, and I guess it's like it's saying, it's what I was saying before about, you know, just because some postgrad students might not want to be involved doesn't mean that that's the same for all postgrad students. And is that because the union's just not offering the right things, or is it because they genuinely don't want to be and they're totally satisfied and they're content on their course and they know what they need to do if they needed any help? If so, then the student union is doing its job.
Mike, what do you think?
Well, I mean, you have to remember that all the students here are actually linked to the extent of they are students of the University of Surrey, and they all fall underneath the union. Now, if the union's not able to represent them, then that's the fault potentially with the union. But I think the union does everything it can to provide the support and provide the opportunities to sort of go out there and sort of find out who needs representing and sort of fight the causes that it needs to fight. With the pop-up stands and things that we sort of seen sort of being developed, the opportunities for SABs to go out and meet people and talk to people. I think the union's trying everything it can, but again, as Osama said, some students just don't want to necessarily get involved. But we are all linked, we are all students here, and at the end of the day, they have the opportunity to sort of stand up and have their voice heard, I think, if they want to.
Okay, well, the presidential candidates will be back on stage in a bit, and we'll go upstairs now for the candidates for Vice President of Societies and Individual Development.